Hey everyone, welcome back to Three Old Tech Dudes. I'm Nathan. You notice I'm kind of all alone today. Yeah, so, sign of the times, right? Yeah, I know. So today we're going to be looking at these things. Yay, more stuff to put on the wall. Roll the intro. Okay, so you've seen this, probably, at least in one of the videos that Tim did. His is homemade. This is actually a professional unit, and it's just this dimmer. So it's an LED bulb. It's not going to dim perfectly, but you get the idea. Yeah, it's a dimmer. Yay! Technically, this is a variac. So there's a little difference between that and a modern dimmer. This is this poor little thing on some real steroids. So this thing is capable of about 500 watts of total power, and it dims quite well. This is capable of 2,500 watts of power, and it is large. It's definitely something that's you could use this thing in part of a like a prop setup for a Halloween costume or something like that, or a Halloween house. It's like power. Anyway, so yeah, it's a fun toy. It's a little big too. So this thing is the same thing as this, much larger, of course. And this thing is actually out of a theatrical lighting dimmer, similar to this one here. And well, it's this is actually a rebuilt one that was built for a local theater. Well, reasonably local theater to me anyway. And they then replaced the entire lighting system with a significantly more modern, up-to-date system. And this thing got pulled out. It was actually spare. This is a rebuilt one for spare. And it was thrown into a closet and forgotten about. So a friend of mine is like, hey, did you still want that thing? Sure. Because now you all get to see it. So I'll get some close-ups of this thing here. This ridiculous thing, camera, is about, well, the original one was mid-60s vintage. The light board was actually replaced in 97 or 98, I think it was, 1997 or 98. So it's been sitting in a closet ever since, and it's kind of the electrical tape holding part of the cord together is kind of not tape anymore. So yeah, but it's real simple to hook up. So we will we'll get that hooked up here in a little bit, and we can dim. We'll use the same light bulb here because it's a great little experimental thing. And yeah, we'll show you how this thing works. And this is significantly different from a modern house dimmer, although it still has the same function. It is radically different in the way it works. So we'll talk about a modern house dimmer right now, because this is not one you normally have in your house. So a modern house dimmer uses what's called a triac, which is actually two SCR devices inverted, and it allows that to dim by sort of changing the start of the phase angle of the sine wave that comes out of your outlet. So it doesn't matter what part of the world you're in, it's still a sine wave coming out of the outlet. It's just how much voltage it is. And a modern triac dimmer simply allows on that sine wave, it depends on where you have it set to as to where the start point for it to turn on at, because it literally is just nothing on, and you're adjusting at which point of that sine wave that you actually turn it on, which is, you know, an interesting way to do it. And of course, the more modern advanced dimmers actually are very linear in where they turn it on, so it looks like they're having, you know, this kind of an effect, when in actuality they're not. They're just not. So this gives you a literally increasing sine wave level coming out of it. Both of these do. These are actually sometimes called auto transformers, but these are actually just a variable transformer, is what a variac actually is. It is not a big resistor, it's a big transformer. And these, because of that, are actually really efficient. These don't waste as much power as just a big resistor would. And you can use just a big resistor, and they did make those as well. Those are, of course, way not used anymore. These still show up occasionally, especially in, like, you know, test equipment like this. So this could be made into one of these, just with putting a box around it, putting in, you know, an electrical cord, an input, or an output rather. It's already had a breaker and a main switch and all this kind of stuff, and that's kind of cool. And we might do that at some point. I don't know. It's right now. This is just a piece that's going to probably find its way to my wall of parts and stuff, like the big hard drive, which is here. So, in a modern dimmer, which I'll show the schematic for now, you can see that there's really just a device and a couple other small devices in line that kind of tell the main device, the triac, what to do. And it's a relatively simple circuit. They can get a lot more complex if you put it into a large-scale lighting system like this one. So, but basically they still work like that. Of course, modern lighting in a theatrical sense is, of course, LED, just like your house lighting is now. And the actual dimmers are not really working the same way because LEDs are actually a DC device. This works because there's a power supply in the base of this. That's, if you look at a modern light bulb, this is one of those light bulbs that you see that's kind of neat because actually the filaments glow for a minute too. It's really cool. But the base of this actually has some electronics in it that create a DC low voltage for these bulbs, because these bulbs only really take like 3 or 4 volts. It's not a whole lot, and it's DC. But those are actually that power supply is much like a smaller power supply. You can really build one up for that. So in a theatrical light, it's of course a bigger power supply because it's more LEDs, a lot brighter. But the power supply is computer controlled. You actually tell it through DMX, turn on, turn off, go bright, go dim, change colors, So you don't have the need for like rack dimmers and stuff like that. Like or after this, but before the modern LEDs, there was an intermediate step, which is kind of like your house dimmer works, like the triac dimmer. So that's what this is here. And this actual particular module is not one that I have ever actually used. This is just a picture off the internet, but I have used ones exactly like this, like exact model and everything at the Performing Arts Center at our high school that I used to run. So, long story, but the module, the actual block in the middle of that module there is the dimmer device. And you just tell it, voltage, with input voltage 0 to 10 volts, gives you full power swing. And the brain then took DMX or CMX, which is the old color trans standard, and turned it into that voltage and allowed that to work. Anyway, so of course in the modern ones now, they're all DMX. CMX is gone. But the DMX standard now, just literally you go up to a modern lighting system, you might see all the Lecos. That's the ones that are on a catwalk way out, kind of a distance away. And you'll see literally just what looks like a big mic cord connecting between one to the next and the next. And that's a modern lighting system. Well, this is out of a very early system, like I said, out of the 1960s, and some of these go way back, significantly further back, back into the 30s and stuff like that, when this technology really started to become an existent thing. Okay, so you can see the transformer. It's here. And this is the actual part that varies when you turn or adjust the lever, which let me... Okay, yeah, it's the oxygen, don't judge. Anyway, so when you turn this, you can see the entire top piece turning. And that's making contact. You can see it's making contact there with this piece here as it turns. You can kind of see how that's supposed to work. So, and then of course this one has, it has the breaker and then the actual power switch. So this is just a switch, and this is actually a circuit breaker that would pop to prevent overload. So, and on this side you have this gearing thing here to adjust that to where this is the swing of it, so it's just here to here, and it turns it all the way around. So you get the idea on what this thing does. Fundamentally it works the same way this one does. It's just this one is you're holding this piece, turning it, rather than a handle, you know, but it works the same basic way. This is of course a plug-in unit for a larger piece of equipment. We'll put the schematic for what this thing actually looks like up here. Keep in mind this is not an electronic device, this is an electrical device, much like this. There's really no like electronic components in this, like transistors, triac, diacs, and such like that. But as long as you never really like overloaded this thing, it should fundamentally kind of last forever. Obviously you can have, you know, moving parts wear out and things like that, but the electronic parts on this, generally speaking, should last an extraordinary amount of time, which is pretty cool in itself. So okay, so let's see if we can hook this thing up and dim the light just like this. So check back in a minute, I'll get it wired up here. Okay, so we've hooked this thing up in the most terrifying way possible. Do not do this. For the love of God, do not do this. This is strictly to demonstrate how it works. Do not do this. Boop, boop, boop. Big letters. Do not do this. What I've done is I've taken my extension system here, extension cord, plugged it into my load center on my rack, which is breakered and fused. And then this has an internal breaker, but it's a pretty big one, so that should trip first, if anything. Switch is off, so now nothing happens. So when I flip the switch on and I start bringing this up, know, and then full power's there, but take it down to there just so you can see it glowing. So this still works. This thing is amazingly old, from the 1960s, and it still functions. Actually, it functions pretty well, comically. So, yeah. Terrifying though it is with my electrical stuff here. Ignore this. That is how this thing works. Now you can really wire one back up to run. So you could technically run your house lights off something like this if you wanted to. I would make that connector much safer. Yeah. But, so what's happening here, I'll turn the breaker back on. And switch down. So it's varying the voltage on that bulb by adjusting the transformer. That's this thing spinning around. You can see the other side of this here. I'll show it to you on my side. So 0. Yeah. So you could potentially watch the voltage of this thing change too. So we'll set that up here real quick. Okay, so that's 90. Yep. Point. So what I'm doing is I'm tapping across this. There's 103. So full power, we have 120, which is what this is hooked to. So as we turn it down, go all the way to 0, and you should see that thing hit 0. So I'll turn it up slowly here. And then you can see the bulb starting to light. Yeah. And then when you flip the switch, 0. So that's what it's actually doing. It is very nicely varying the voltage up and down. It's actually very linear, smooth, nice, pretty way to do it. Yeah, this is a look at what is basically a giant variac, but it's actually a variable transformer out of a very old lighting equipment, lighting system, lighting rig, whatever you want to call it, lighting control panel. So yeah, and then my terrifying way to hook it up, but it still works. This thing's still fully functional after 1968 to now. So this thing is approximately 53 years old, 53, 54. The transformer itself, the actual component to this thing that does the work, is not that old. It's probably from, I'm going to guess, the late 90s, probably 95 to 97, mid to late, I guess, actually. So, yeah, this thing was rebuilt a long time ago, put in storage for a system that no longer exists. That's kind of a neat piece, though, and it's still fully functional. It's definitely something if you know, like steampunk era electrical equipment, but yeah, if you're really into steampunk, something like this is because you could technically mount this, hook this thing up, and use this to dim the lights in your living room or something. This would make a pretty fun piece just to laugh at for the reality of it. But for now, this thing's going to go back onto my shelf of oddities that I have, and I don't know. If you have any ideas what we should do with this thing, let me know down in the comments down there. Well, again, leave us a comment. Let me know what you think. Any ideas you want to see done with this ridiculous thing. Or if you've run across something like this as well, hey, you know, that'd be really neat. Let me know a story on that. And for 3 Real Tech Dudes, I'm Nathan. Make sure that if you have not subscribed, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell icon, because we try and release about once a week. We've been, this week and last week, have been a little bit off, mainly because of some issues that Timmy has had, because he's been editing our videos lately. So we'll be back soon. We're going to try and get another round of videos where we're all 3 together. And we're going to try to do some antenna builds and some upcoming things. And I think we're going to actually have an antenna build session. We might do a live session with that. So we'll definitely let you guys know. So make sure you have subscribed if you haven't, because then you can hit the bell icon. Let you know when we post. So especially when we try and go live here, probably in the next month or so, we're going to try and do a live antenna build session. So yeah, and be looking forward to that. So anyway, for 3 Real Tech Dudes, I'm Nathan, and you guys have a good one and be safe.